And now, it's time for MsWeedWiki Speaks. Okay, you're listening to MsWeedWiki, and I'm here with Nicole Palmer to talk about cannabis concentrates on the MsWeedWiki Speaks podcast. Hi, Nicole, and thank you for joining me today.
Hi, how are you?
I'm not bad. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So I guess I should start because we were going to discuss cannabis concentrates. Are you smoking any concentrates right now? What are you getting ready to smoke with us today?
I actually just finished smoking and I just had a spliff and I ate a gummy. I've been eating the fuzzy peaches.
Love it. Okay, and so what is in is it a THC CBD?
It's a THC concentrate and usually 6 in a pack. And they're about, I believe, 80 milligrams.
Nice. Okay, and so let's talk about your weed journey. How long have you been using cannabis?
17 years.
Okay, so that's quite a while. I would say you're a veteran.
17 long years, yes.
Yeah, tell me how that journey started for you.
It actually started when I was in high school. My first year of high school, new group of friends, and back in the day, it's like one paper between a group of people, and that's kind of where it started. But it wasn't really consistent till I was maybe in college.
Okay, and did you have a preference back then of like what type of weed you'd smoke, or?
It seemed I normally smoked with one particular friend, so it seemed to always be either China Bud or OG Kush.
Okay.
And those were the two only weed strains that I smoked back then.
Okay. And so what would you say, has your usage changed over the years? Would you say it's gone up, gone down?
I think it's gone up, but I think I have a better grasp on kind of maintaining versus having one smoke and getting extremely high. So I've been able to kind of maintain my highs better.
Got it. And what changed? What was the turning point for you with that?
I think it actually was starting to affect my productivity. I was like coming home from work and basically smoking and sleeping, and then waking up like in the middle of the night and then not being able to do anything and then having to basically go back to work the next day. So it was really just affecting what I did after work and my productivity. So I kind of had to look at that and decide how I want to continue my weed journey.
Okay. So what kind of things went into how you came to the conclusions and like when you were examining and assessing your productivity? Because you're a busy person. I was looking at your Instagram trying to prepare it, and I'm champagne desserts. So you make champagne based desserts, which sound delectable, by the way. Do you want to tell us?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I actually started in 2017, and basically champagne desserts is cupcakes that are made with champagne. So I offer cocktail flavors like mimosa, peach Bellini. I do a lemon champagne. So I offer cupcakes. I do brownies. Recently, I did gin cupcakes for a friend of mine, as well as I've done Hennessy cupcakes as well. But I try to focus more on the champagne and sparkling wines and Proseccos.
Nice. And how long have you been doing this?
I've been baking since I was about 10, but the business has been about 2016, 2017, where I really started putting it out there to the world.
Okay. And so was your cannabis use impacting your productivity for this business, for example?
It was definitely in regards to the administrative end of doing my business. Certain things that I was frustrated with or was having difficulty with, my excuse was to take a break, and then my smoke break would become the whole night or a few hours, and then I don't really get back into what I was supposed to do.
Right. So it would end up like what starts as a break becomes a detour, and then you wouldn't get back to what your original task was.
Definitely, yes.
Ooh, I can relate to that. I think a lot of us could relate to that. So how did you attack this problem then? Did you just start, like, what did you do?
Well, I decided to more schedule my smoke breaks, which was essentially if I make sure that I complete a certain amount of task, then basically the smoke break was my reward. And then I was giving myself enough time to actually smoke and enjoy versus just kind of smoking and rushing to go back in, because you kind of want to enjoy. You get wrapped up in the not really getting to sit there and really enjoy the smoke, sit down and relax. So I kind of was scheduling those breaks, and then I realized that that really worked a lot better than just kind of freeballing it.
Right. Because it was like a work reward system. Basically.
Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, because otherwise if you're you're free falling with it, it's kind of, you can't treat microdosing, for example, the way you would a smoker of tobacco, and how every 2 hours, they're out there, or whatever. Sometimes it would be every 2 hours. Another day it's every hour they're out there.
Yes.
Yeah. You can't compare it exactly to cannabis that way. So that makes sense. Thanks. Did you start looking at different cultivars too, or were you starting to distinguish what strains and their impacts during the day versus night?
Yes, that's, I think, when I really started to look at more strains, understanding sativas, hybrids, also understanding the quantity of smoking was also relatable to my productivity. So I also looked at that, but I also looked at the different types of highs that I liked and the different ways that I was using weed in a way when it came to my business, because sometimes it helped with my creativity, but then it was learning which ones were better for creativity versus which ones were kind of just to give me this whole knockout high where I don't want to do anything. So it kind of not kind of, but it definitely made me more specific on what I was smoking, how I was smoking, but even other ways to still have my cannabis, but not necessarily be smoking.
Which gets into a nice segue. So you said you've been smoking weed for 17 years. That's a long time.
Yes.
And I'll assume like you would get your own weed, you roll your own weed?
Yes.
So what makes you venture into changing things up with strains? Like what clued you into, looking at the different strains that would distinguish when you want your creativity versus when you want a couch lock,
I think it was like my first or second trip to an actual dispensary where I was able to not only see the strains, but see the information. And I'm an information junkie. I love information. So for me, being able to see, okay, which ones are better for daytime, which ones are better for nighttime, which ones are better for creativity, which ones are better for anxiety. Like I didn't realize that if you are more conscious of your intake, you can actually get way more out of the cannabis use. And you then feel better about even intaking it if you're not productive. Because if you're, for example, having anxiety and you smoke, it's okay to not go back to what was making you anxious, but at least you're trying to address the anxiety aspect of it. Because
you become intentional. You become intentional about how you're using it and what symptoms or what conditions you're trying to teach exactly, or treat exactly. I love how you distinguished how it was a dispensary. Can you tell us more? Like, what about this dispensary that you went to where you saw this information?
It's actually east of Oshawa. It's almost near, I believe it's past Coburg. And it's sort of, I believe it's on like a reserve.
So indigenous, and
Yes, sorry, indigenous.
Nicole,
Yes.
my experience was identical. So I just wanted to hear if yours was. So I'm laughing at the irony because
Yes.
that's exactly what happened. Once I went to a dispensary on an indigenous reservation, it was like between the leafly charts on the wall, okay,
Yes.
posters just distinguishing what indica was from sativa to
Yes.
individual strains having what symptoms that they would address, what
Yes.
side effects you would have to deal with. My mind was blown because now I could pick a weed that isn't going to give me the munchies because I hate munchies.
Yeah. That's my biggest problem as well, is the munchies. Oh, it's a problem. It's a problem. So I definitely agree with you. Oh, yes.
Oh, especially you with baking all around you. Oh, you got to be able to control it.
Well, you know what's funny? I actually don't really eat cupcakes. My thing is more pastries, so I'm actually glad in that regards, but I do love the cream cheese buttercream I make. So when I make that, I do have to be very cautious.
Cream cheese icing is the way to my heart. To all our listeners out there, if you ever want to suck up to MsWeedWiki, cream cheese icing, way to my heart. It works every time. Like every time. And I know that certain strains would have me eating through the whole bowl. Like,
oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
So I guess then, you having been a visitor of dispensaries and the indigenous reservations, should I ask, is that how you got into concentrates? Because that's how my initiation started.
Yes, that actually, no, actually the first time I ever had like a concentrate was like in a cookie. And it was basically the first time I'd heard about doing butter. I'd never heard about butter. So I was like, okay, I'm not a cookie person, but I'll try it. And I didn't really like it, but I was curious because I had been smoking for about 10 years by then. So I was like, I really need to try something a little bit different. So once I did go to the indigenous reservation and I saw all the different types of concentrates, I was kind of like, oh, I want a little bit of this. I want a little bit of that. And I love the fact that they have individual items that you can get, that you can try. So it was kind of like the perfect place for me to experiment.
And when you're looking at that, like experimenting, did you find the environments you were in were conducive to experimenting? Were they patient? Were they like, because I loved how they were really good about explaining everything.
Yes, they were very patient. They were very informative, which I liked. I also liked explaining to them that, you know, my tolerance is a bit higher than what most people smoke. Therefore, what you would normally recommend for somebody who may smoke once or twice a day isn't what would work for me. And I necessarily want something that's going to work with my tolerance. And I like the explanations of how to properly, you know, take concentrates, because I always thought that, okay, like you eat it and instantly it hits you, and finally kind of understanding how you have to be, it has to digest and all of that made me more comfortable to try things, because it's kind of like when you go to a doctor, if your doctor knows a lot of information, you feel a little bit more comfortable. Right. I felt a lot more comfortable just even sampling things I'd never tried or never even heard of, because there was information, but speaking to the people there were definitely people who knew what they were talking about.
Right. And so with those, you're talking about the edibles too, right? Like the edible baked goods. Okay. Did you find they were good at introducing you to the different types of cannabis concentrates, like the distillates and the syringes, like the dab sauces and the resins?
Yes, definitely. Because I kept hearing things, but I heard horror stories about like people blowing up their houses. So it was always something where I was like, people are making these things. It doesn't sound like something that you should be, you know, partaking in, because if like it's so dangerous to make, right, you know, like this is just something that you shouldn't. And then being able to hear how it's a lot better for you, it's a lot, just the different ways that it's beneficial. and just even different ways to smoke it, I was like, wow, I was very kind of like judgmental and didn't really know based off of seeing like kind of the extreme of it. It was also the first time I really understood, like, for example, shattered. Like I kept hearing about it, but I never actually saw it. Okay.
Yeah, for our listeners, I'm holding up my Shatterizer, and it was an indigenous reservation. The dispensary that I went to, the Medicine Wheel, was where I first.
Okay, it's right. It's okay. So I go there, but it's a little bit further down. Yeah.
Yeah, the Medicine Wheel was and shout out to them. They're the first medical dispensary I ever walked into, and I have to say they've pampered me in terms of the knowledge experience. You do not get that experience at all when you go to an Ontario government store.
No.
Not Tokyo Smoke,
Never.
not One Plant, not any of the ones downtown I ventured into. And
yeah, I've been to One Plant a few times.
Right. And I mean, One Plant is great when you know what you want.
Yes.
But when you don't, it's not going to be a rewarding experience. I mean, you'll get high off this stuff, but you may not get what you wanted
Correct. Yes. I realized I need the information, and I need to be able to speak to somebody who knows what it is. And they'll tell you if they're not familiar. And I like that. I like the honesty of them saying, if I'm not familiar, I'm not sure, or they'll grab another buddy who's maybe familiar, which I like that honesty in the fact of it's kind of a 50-50 gamble if you take it on yourself versus you kind of going off of a recommendation and then it not being what you thought it was going to be.
I completely agree. And I will say that whether it's a government store like Ontario, like One Plant, or on Indigenous, they both will be honest if they haven't touched it. I just think that when I would come across Ontario cannabis store employees, like the retailers,
yes,
half the time you could tell they didn't use the product there. They would just say, like, if you wanted to get into hash, they'd be like, well, I don't usually use this hash. I use hash from somebody else. And I'm like, oh, but you work here and this isn't the product you're buying. You know, that's not what you encounter at the Indigenous reservation dispensaries. There, they really seem to be proponents of their products and they stand by them.
Yes, I do agree. That is very true.
So that also gives you additional faith when you're getting specific advice or endorsements from them, I found.
Yes, definitely, because they have first-hand experience with their own products.
Right, they do. And they're not going to be embarrassed about it. They don't, it's like, no, this is where you are, of course. And it shouldn't be any different if you think about it than when you go to the LCBO and they'd have, the wine promos in store. Remember in the days before COVID and a pandemic when you could get samples on a Saturday?
Yes. That was great.
But you could ask an LCBO staff member about one of the selections, and they'd give you their input. I find at the cannabis retailers by the government, they shy away distinctly from doing that. I find either because they just don't use the stuff themselves there, or they're reluctant to tell you. Do you get that impression?
I definitely get the impression that they don't use the products, because definitely when I go and I ask questions, they're like, oh, I'm not familiar, I'm not sure, I've never tried it before, all of that stuff. So it's very interesting that you say that, because I've noticed that. I also have noticed that there are actual people who work in the dispensaries that don't smoke. Like I've had one or two people tell me that they don't smoke, and it's kind of hard to take their recommendations, because if you don't smoke, how could you have that experience to recommend to someone?
I completely agree, and I don't even think that's a discriminatory thought process. I'm not looking to take a vegetarian's input on my favorite pork dishes either at a rib.
Exactly.
Right? So it lends itself to what their experience is like. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of bud tenders out there that would survive long in the cannabis industry if they don't partake, just because How good are they going to be at making recommendations? Unless they're really, listening to 5 million podcasts and are just nerds about consuming information.
That's true.
But that would be the exception, I find, not necessarily the rule.
Yeah, I definitely think that it makes more, especially because you're trying to basically give information. People are coming to seek information when they are purchasing cannabis, especially when they're trying to get into the different varieties of cannabis. They're coming to you for a recommendation. They're specifically coming to you because they don't know, or they would just be walking in and saying, I want this, this, and this, and just leaving the store. So it's kind of like someone needs to know the information, because there are people that are genuinely interested, but they want the right information. They don't even just want, because you can go on the internet if you want, but to get the right information, you kind of want to seek the source, as close to the source as possible.
I would completely agree. And if you take that even further, what about your friend circle? Do you have friends that smoke as well?
Yes, most of my friends smoke.
Now, would you say you are the most educated on cannabis products, or are your friends at the same level?
I think it kind of varies. Some are way more knowledgeable than I am, and then I have some that are not really knowledgeable. So we kind of just bounce information off one another. We also kind of just do research on our own. But I sort of kind of went through a phase where I was just like, I wanted all the information, so I kind of went overboard with learning. So it's kind of just like, really depends on who I'm speaking to for the day.
Right. But it's good, though, that you get to teach them about the stuff you find, and they teach you about the stuff they find as well. Because one thing I would say is the concentrates market isn't doing well. First of all, let's be honest. I go on the record all the time saying the cannabis industry is not doing anything to advertise or to attract Black women customers at all.
Correct. I would agree with you.
But from also a education standpoint and a product awareness standpoint, they're not doing anything to educate us as well. I think, again, the medical dispensaries have a leg up because their customer base, at least the ones that I go to on Indigenous reservations, a lot of their customer base are elderly and retirees. So they build those relationships very intentionally, and they want them to be well educated on the products. But I don't know who's going out and advertising concentrates to my friends,
Yeah, no.
You don't see them marketed right online. Well, like not even because I know they can't market, but you know what I mean? In the OCS site themselves, they don't provide any expansive education about the benefits or even what the different concentrates are. It's very cursory, and then maybe a link to another website for more info.
Yes, I definitely noticed that as well.
Do you think then there's room for to grow like a customer base within our community of concentrates? Like,
I definitely do, because I feel like as women, we're definitely evolving. And I feel like with just evolving in general, our experiences are evolving. And with concentrates, I feel like it definitely would be beneficial for us to also be able to learn. There are so many benefits that would benefit Black women. And I think that if we were able to get the education, I think a lot of the bias around it would disappear, because I think that just the lack of not understanding or not knowing, or even just having the access to that information so easy, kind of has a lot of people shying away. Because I have some friends that, like, when you talk about shatter, they think it's this like crazy thing, and if they have no clue what it's really about,
right,
or they've heard it from like a teenager or something, they haven't heard it from their group of friends, or even just maybe coworkers that are around their same age as well.
I agree. Do you have your medical prescription, your medical
No.
prescription? That's
No.
actually one way I can see to close that gap, because medical cannabis clinics do have concentrates. They sell Shatterizer and
Oh,
devices.
wow.
Yes, yes. And actually, from a product placement and strategy and growth perspective, it makes sense. I find personally, one of the most effective parts of using concentrates is when I'm having pain, like when I have physical, like when my chronic pain kicks in. Yeah,
Okay.
the shatter will attack that a lot quicker than me smoking a spliff, even, because it's one or two hits versus
Yes.
getting.
I could definitely see that. Yeah. I actually haven't really tried to do that, use it as like a more of a pain management, but that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
I get a lot of back pain, so that I'll definitely try that.
Yeah, for me, I used to start using it later at night to substitute using painkillers when the pain got too bad. And
Okay.
yeah, I definitely found if you compared doing shatter versus weed, it was just a more focused pain relief, I found, especially if I'm using it for that intention.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it's going to also vary depending on what shatter you're doing. I don't go too high on like I don't tend to do indica shatter, because I assume that's just going to put me on a couch and not moving anywhere.
Yes.
And I find I don't look for weed to do that anymore. I really don't.
Yes. I don't really either. I've learned that it's actually about the quantity, I've realized for myself a lot.
Right.
And so for me, if I have a good strain and I, for example, smoke my bong just recently broke.
Oh my God,
Yes,
the tragedy.
I know. And it was Marvel. It was a Marvel bong too.
Okay, what Marvel? Like what was on it?
It had Captain America. It had
Did it have the shield?
yes, it had the shield on the bottom. Yes,
Where'd you
yes.
get it from?
Pipe Dreams.
Oh, which is right next to Sunrise.
Yes.
Yes, I may have gone to Sunrise, put my food in the car, and popped over to Pipe Dreams. Don't judge.
Yes. I love that place. They have amazing bongs.
And the owner is so chill.
Yes. Yes. They're all so chill in there. They're all very informative. They'll sit there and talk to you for as long as you need to. And I like that because I wasn't familiar with bongs when I went and got my first one.
Yeah.
And my Marvel one was my second one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, can I propose that we go together on a bong shopping date? Because
yes.
I need a new bong, and I've been meaning to go say hi to my friend over at Pipe Dreams. So we could do that if you're up to
we
it.
could definitely do that. I really
this adventure and outing.
Yes, this is going to be a wonderful outing.
Yeah, bongs are. I'm planning to do more with them in the winter, because I find, and that's why also it's timely us having this discussion, because when the temperatures get colder, I don't know about you, but I smoked my first joint today in probably 3 days. I do not go outside to smoke as much. I don't like it.
Oh, wow.
So when it gets colder, that's when I get into my vape pens. That's when I get into my vaporizer. And that's when I get into my concentrates, because I am not built for outside smoking. I'm really not.
Yeah, it does. You know what? That's actually my goal this winter, because I don't smoke in my house, and going outside in the cold, dealing with the snow, like it's just not something that I want to be dealing with this winter. So I actually have been looking into some different pens. I'm actually trying to kind of find the best one. I've been kind of asking people who have consistently been using their pens, because I've heard so many different opinions. So I'm kind of doing my research still.
Well, let me ask you, are you looking for a pen to burn flour, or are you looking for a pen to burn concentrates and oils?
I was actually looking for both, in regards to, I like ones that do burn the flower, just because I do like to still smoke my spliff. So therefore, still using the same product, but in two different ways.
Yes.
But I do also like the concentrate pens, just in regards to like the odor and stuff like that in the home.
Yes.
Things like that. But I've also heard really good things about using like the oils versus the pens. So I just think that kind of having both options would be best for me.
That sounds really great. And you're right. It's going to be more than one device, especially if you want it to work well. I look very carefully when people are saying like a device that can do flower and oil, really, because they both have properties that are going to get dirty or muck up in there. So how how effective can the heating element be if you're putting it, with sticky stuff in one moment and then granular stuff in the next, right?
Correct. That was my same thought process.
Right. So I have an Argo Ariser, which is a lovely device. I've had it about 2 years now, almost 2 years. December, it'll be 2 years. My one complaint is I don't love the battery life. It takes longer and longer for it to reheat. Although I guess if I would sit with it plugged in more, it probably would reheat quicker. The other thing, but that would be my only complaint. I still think it's actually superior to the PAX 3. And, anybody out there listening, you can at me and we can talk about it politely. But my biggest complaint about the PAX, other than the price range, was that it looked like it was a real chore to clean. And to me, the key to longevity of these devices is your ability to maintain them as cleanly as possible.
Yes. That's actually been my one concern, is the cleaning of them, because I like to make sure it's completely clean, because in regards to the buildup, if you don't clean it properly the first time, basically every time after that, you're ending up with that buildup.
Right.
And then you're going to basically not be able to use the pen.
Right. And the design of whatever the device is going to give you hints as to how clean it can get or not. Right. And also when you're going into the oils, that's something to bear in mind. If you're getting a device like, say, a Shatterizer that's going to always put it in a compartment, that's going to have one type of, you'll always have to replace those compartments, the pods, for example, for Shatterizer. But if you do dabs with dab rings, those look like, because they're so simplistic, that the maintenance is like nothing.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah, I've done some research into it, but I kind of I hear so many different things.
Because there's so many different products,
I've realized there are so many different products. I like that, but as an information junkie, you just kind of go down this rabbit hole of just I need to know more. I need to know more. I need to know more.
Until your head explodes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm glad though that I'm finding another person like me who is fascinated by the new innovations in cannabis products, for sure. Because in a lot of ways, we're kind of the pioneers for cannabis in the community, because they're ignoring us and they're not doing anything to go out of their way to educate us. Our friends are going to learn from us when we try these products, right?
That's very true.
Think about even, the guys from back in the day that you would get your weed from, or your old, your exes that you would smoke with that, were big cess burners or whatever. Do you think they're going to touch a Shatterizer?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But could they benefit from it? Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely they could.
But no one is thinking about marketing it to them.
Yeah, that is very true.
So I think
there's a huge hole in the market.
Well, I feel like, this discussion has been amazing, because now we have a call to action.
Yes, we do. We definitely do.
We need to convert everybody, you know.
We must.
One device at a time and one one girlfriend and boyfriend at a time, because
yes,
honestly, there are so many benefits to cannabis, and there are, like, look at what we've covered in our discussion, so many products out there.
Yes. It's the education is definitely the first step, because it opens up to, if you don't like one thing or one thing's not for you, there's so many different alternatives that you can try to find what works for you. It's just kind of you deciding that you want to learn more or you want to do that research, until they decide to just throw the information in your face.
Exactly. When we look at the lack of information, though, with everybody, are there things that you wish that specific actions you wish these companies would do to market to us better?
Well, I think they definitely need to market it in a more positive aspect, in a way of it being like more beneficial health-wise, I would say, because I think for a lot of, for example, Black women, we want to be strong. We want to just keep pushing forward. When it comes to body aches and pains, I know a lot of people don't like to use pain medication because of the way it makes them feel. They don't want to take Tylenol and stuff like that because of the side effects in regards to physical health. So they're basically going along and struggling and hurting and in pain when they don't necessarily have to, without still doing things that they are going to have side effects for, such as, you know, not being able to function, or like, I know Tylenol like eats away the lining of your stomach.
As does naproxen. A lot of the harder the painkiller, the more it's eating away at your stomach. Even aspirin, you know, like.
And I think that's crazy. And a lot of people aren't taking it for those reasons, but instead of finding alternatives, they're kind of just dealing with the pain, pushing through. And in reality, that works only for a short period of time before you have long-term effects.
And the same can be said for sure, and I can attest to that anecdotally with mental health.
Yes.
I was prescribed antidepressants last November for the first time ever in my life, and I'm just turned 47. The side effects from using those, first of all, yes. and you're never really sure, is it working well enough, or are you just managing the side effects, you know? But yes. Yeah, the side effects, and when you think about how, you know, antidepressants take almost 30 days for it to even get into your system, so you have to ask yourself, well, how much am I altering my system with this?
Very true.
Right? Versus the amount of time it takes for cannabis to take effect if you're using it for depression or anxiety. So much, there's so much room for education.
Definitely, I think an alternative way. And I feel like for a lot of people, it takes away the stigma, for example, with mental health, saying that you take antidepressants versus saying that you're using cannabis to manage your mental health. For a lot of people, that makes them feel more comfortable, especially if they are trying to live a more natural or holistic lifestyle. So I feel like then if you're able to take away certain stigmas and excuses, you're actually able to address your mental health in a more productive way.
Completely agree. And because there's so many components to it, right? There is a chemical imbalance, but there's so many ways to attack it. And the traditional pharmacology, while it may work for some people, it's not the entire population. It's not consistent. And at least for me, one of the things I realized too is once my doctor's prescribing it, he's not really following up to see how it's working.
Oh.
He's just like renewing it. You know, he's not looking at, okay, well, how is it working for you? What are you finding different? You know? So, yeah. Like I said, you end up, in my case, I ended up wondering, well, is this really working? Once I get past all, you know, managing these side effects, is it really working for me? Or is it just maintaining, say, a baseline for me that I don't fall further below.
Yes, I actually can agree with that in regards to, I also have mental health issues, and in regards to, I used to be on medication and I'm no longer on medication. And I will definitely agree with the fact of not really knowing if you're basically at what they consider to be like a normal level, and you're basically just maintaining that level of what they consider normal and what is normal. And is it, you don't really addressing, I don't feel like just giving medication addresses the issues, because the medication addresses one side effect of it, which is a lot of it is the chemical. But for people, it's what your triggers are and stuff. Like, medication doesn't help you address what your triggers are or provide you with coping mechanisms. So I definitely look at it in the way of, I wasn't sure if it was really working. I wasn't sure if I was even processing things in a way at all, because I didn't really feel like my brain was working to the best of its ability. And I didn't see how, if something's supposed to be beneficial to me in regards to my mental health, why am I mentally not feeling at my best anyways?
I agree. And I was waiting for it to kick in, and it wasn't. And at one point in January for me, my doctor switched medications, and he put me on something newer. And again, another 30 days to wait for it to kick in. And then those side effects were worse. So,
wow.
Dealing with that, it was like, okay, now I need the CBD just to manage, the nausea.
Yeah.
So by actually end of May, I was like, okay, I need to get a medical cannabis prescription. And because the other thing too is the doctors, most family doctors are not following up with you, other than and during COVID, even less.
Yeah.
It was just manually renewing, automatically renewing the prescriptions.
Wow.
And it's like, hey, I need the psychotherapy. I need other things because this isn't really helping. No.
Yes.
And when I said I was going to switch to medical cannabis, I was surprised I didn't get as much resistance as I thought I was going to get from the doctor.
Oh, okay.
But
that's really good, because I feel like some doctors are becoming more open-minded to the alternative ways to medication, because I think some of them are starting to understand the side effects of these medications in regards to physical health.
Right. And I can respect with doctors, it came down to them they respect science. And I get that.
Yes.
And there's not a lot of data if most of this product was sold on the street. Up until medical cannabis, for example, in Canada became legal in 2001. But that being said, once it's been legal for the last 19 years, doctors have had 19 years to get up on it and educate people. So there's no excuse now.
That is very true. There is no excuse.
And I think the newer doctors that graduate are definitely going to develop a different perspective, because I think kids, like younger generations behind us, are going to have a different perspective about it.
Yes, I think so as well, especially seeing the older generations and the effects of prescription medication. I think for a lot of people, we have some family member that, you have a close relationship with, that you can see the side effects of years and years and years of medication, where you don't want to take the medication and you know that you need to deal with certain things. So you're going to have to find an alternative. And so you're going to go to cannabis, but now it's like, okay, I need to research what's going to help this specific issue versus kind of just a general, I'm going to just use cannabis as a whole.
Right. And I find the older generation, like baby boomers, they're not going to just do it on a whole. They're using it with intention for specific reasons. Whether
Yes.
Arthritis or joint pain or insomnia or, anxiety. They're being pretty specific when they're, at least from what I would overhear at the dispensaries.
Mm-hmm. I think, and I also think though, being able to see that you're able to use cannabis for more than just recreational uses opens it up to people wanting to learn more and wanting to also discover the concentrates, because for example, if you are using it for pain management, being able to use the shatter for pain management, it's a lot, like you realize, okay, you can get that same sort of instant pain relief. It's kind of like you've already been using cannabis, so it's not like something you're not used to. The tolerance may be different. The concentrate is, it's stronger, but in reality, it's not something that your body is not used to absorbing.
Exactly.
So you're not adding certain things, and a lot of people now, they want to detox their body from a lot of things. So in a way, you're kind of helping that process along as well.
And that's why there's been such growth in plant-based medicine, period, in that whole movement. It's really swelling and growing. Speaking of growing, you grow? Do you grow?
No, I actually don't. I actually am looking to. I've been looking in the group and I've been watching everybody, but I had recently just moved apartments. So I started planting some, but they didn't kind of grow and they kind of got damaged during my move. So I'm kind of looking to start again. It's something I'm interested in, but I definitely want to learn a bit more before I start.
Well, definitely, you're in the right spot to learn about growing.
Yes.
Definitely, and watch, because we are going to feature more discussions about indoor growing, because that's all you can do during the winter months. So definitely stay tuned to updates in the group about that. I want to thank you so much for talking to me. But before I let you go, can you tell our listeners how they can reach you and find you on social media?
They can find me on Instagram. My personal page is Spiritual Hoardy Queen, and I kind of just post everything: food, my plants, things like that, my smoking. I'm also on Facebook. It's Nicole F Palmer, and that's kind of also where I just post my day-to-day. You can see about my businesses, and from there kind of connect and learn more about me and my businesses as well.
Well, thank you so much. And I will post also your contacts and handles in the liner notes of the podcast when it gets posted in the next few days. But I want to thank you again, Nicole. This has been a great session, and I really enjoyed talking with you. I've been listening to MsWeedWiki Speaks, and I've been talking about cannabis concentrates with Nicole Palmer today, who's also the owner of Champagne Desserts. And also the blogger of the Slay Up, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I want to make sure we pitch that as well. Thank you again for talking to me.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the MsWeedWiki podcast, and we thank you for your support.